Hola, and thank you for joining us for another installment of Astrology versus Psychology. I am joined here today by Angela Eureka Smith, who is,
Hello.
yes, of many things, space and time, Authortunities, the newsletter and the hub, right? The Horror Writers Association president, um, and just all around great Brazilian. Say hello, Angela.
Hello, and I'm looking forward to finding out what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yes, an author of a couple of different books too, including Authortunities
Yeah.
and Inugenie and Bittersweets. So check out her stuff. We've got links below. And also we've got Stephen Schwartz here, who is a purveyor of many different types of games. He's just like this powerhouse of ideas and imagination and creativity, but small town tales among them, which helps facilitate writing, and you really should check it out. But I'll let Stephen maybe say a little bit.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be on your podcast. I always learn so much, and I learn a lot and love to listen. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming, both of you. And I'm Nikki DeCaster with 11th House Publishing. It's a neurodiverse publishing company and a nonprofit. And we kind of aim to do things a little different. That's why I'm skipping through the DSM-5 here and seeing how astrology and psychology can work together to better understand various topics. So today we're looking at kleptomania. And it is, when I first thought of it, I mean, everybody knows it's just like stealing, right? Compulsive stealing. But it's not about the money so much or the value of the object, it's the taking of it. So it's a very interesting compulsion that, it immediately made me think of Mars with action, and just taking without thinking. Mars tends to just do. So I'm like, there's probably some aspect there with Mars, possibly with Mercury. Mercury can be just, it's our thought process, or the moon, either one deals with thinking. And so if there's like Mars crossed with either of them, it can be quick. I'm just doing it and not even thinking about anything. But also there's a control aspect. So with that, of course, comes our friend Saturn. So I expected to see Saturn-Mars compilation, just like we have with Pyromania, which was last week. So it's in that impulse control. I could have maybe even put them together, to be quite honest with you, because they stem from the same place of just seeing if you can do it, doing it because you want to. It also kind of sparked to me this sort of thought of how we are in the wild. So like in the wild, when you're hunting and gathering, whatever, you just take. Like you see the berries on the bush, into your mouth they go, or into your pouch they go, right? There's no thought of having to pay somebody for the berry bush. You might give like an offering later on to the sun god, but it's almost like there's maybe a deep instinctual thing getting triggered here with some of this stuff. That even though, as we'll see with some of the celebrity charts, they have all the money in the world and they're stealing like a $7 lip balm, So it's not about that. It's about just, I'm taking this because I feel like it and because I can in the moment. The thrill of it, maybe even. So, did you guys have anything you wanted to add or questions?
No, I think it's interesting. I mean, I've certainly went through my shoplifting stage, or maybe I shouldn't say that here, but when I was a teenager, and it was definitely, I'm not saying that it was a klepto kind of thing, but in a way it was just to see if I could get away with it, really, and for dares and things like that. And most of the stuff I would just throw away, so I can totally see that urge.
Yeah. I think I stole something as a kid, and then I felt so bad for the store owner because I like saw it from their point of view, because I had to bring it back. Go, you're taking this from them, and then I was like, no, So Interesting. Like and I've got a Cancerian energy. So that's gonna like you hit him in the feels and forget it. You know. So Stephen, were you gonna say something?
No, I guess it can be an addiction, right? You get addicted to doing that, and I guess you have some sort of underlying trigger, or a lot of those things that I've read about happen because of your youth too. Maybe something you didn't have when you were a young child, or an abuse or something like that could have, hey, I never had that doll, and so you have this yearning, you're trying to fill a void in a and you're still stuck in some way in that 7-year-old that was neglected or something, for
Yeah,
food or attention or whatever.
that's a good point. There's a survival aspect to Saturn energy too. That's just like if you were in that lower frequency of just getting by in the moment, then you're not seeing outside of just this object will make me feel something good right now. Right?
Hmm.
Making this will make me feel like I have something.
Yeah, I always call it the limbic brain. Logically, you're like, why would I ever steal the $7 lip balm, right? So your logical brain's going, yeah, no way. But the limbic brain, there's some reason you're just compelled to do it. And I think that gap between your limbic and your logical brains usually has something to do with something missing in your life, or you're trying to
Yeah,
resolve something.
there's a tension that's relieved from it, which could again speak to that survival thing. So like if I don't take the
Hmm.
berries now, then the next person that comes along will. So I'm going to take
Yeah.
them, could be hitting on something like that. Right. So the DSM-5 has this to say on kleptomania. It's recurrent failure to resist impulses to steal objects that are not intended or not needed for personal use or for their monetary value. So if you're stealing like Monet paintings or whatever, that's different, right? So we see society putting these different measures on things based on, like last week when we were looking at pyromania, they're like, you can't be doing it for monetary gain though, because then it's not a mental disorder. If you're just doing it because the fire talks to you or you like the enjoyment of it, then we're putting you in the DSM-5. If you're doing it for money, well, that's a perfectly understandable reason. you know, so I found that interesting. It seems to be present here. Increasing sense of tension immediately before committing the theft and pleasure or gratification while you commit it. So there's, again, speaks to that survival instinct. I have to do this, or something bad will happen. Maybe there's that kind of feeling that often happens with compulsive disorder. Something bad will happen if I don't take the lip balm. Okay, all right, I have it, I'm good. So looking into, where those aspects of control or loss of control deep-seated, like Stephen was talking about, often from childhood, like getting to that deep root to help understand where this compulsion is coming from, like a scarcity mindset, really on steroids. If I don't take it, then it's not going to be there. The stealing is not committed to express anger or vengeance, not in response to delusion or hallucination. So if you just say, the lip balm asked me to steal it, what does that get you a different diagnosis, apparently, right? And it's not better explained by a manic episode, conduct disorder, etc. So then I went looking for celebrities that have either been caught or, admitted to this at various stages. Most famous for me and my generation was Winona Ryder, right? It was like, whoa, she has all
Hmm.
this money, all this power, and she's like stealing whatever it was from a dress or something from a boutique. And so looking at her chart, you can see you've got her ascendant here and Jupiter, both kind of snuggled up together. So the ascendant is Mars. So it's the physical self, the compulsion. And Jupiter can kind of blow things up So there could be this, you know, that compulsion and that feeling that it'll all be okay doing that. But then we also see her Mars is very busy, right? It's got all these red lines talking to a lot of different aspects. Got, in her case, we have Mars in the sign of Aquarius, which is co-ruled by Saturn. So it carries some of those elements with it. And Aquarius is kind of compulsive energy as well. I'm just going to do it because I feel like it. And so we can see that. And it's also kind of talking to a lot of different stuff here of just maybe the pleasure of it with this Venus square, or the Mercury that I talked about, just sort of being curious or mischievous even. There's a bit of mischief that comes with Mercury energy, and not overthinking it. And the squares, the red lines, is just kind of a disconnect. Like maybe I do know better in my higher mind, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
There, and I can, you know. So it's kind of a disconnect with the Mars energy is my greater point there. And then we've got Taryn Manning, who is, she's from Orange is the New Black. And she's got her Mars with Mercury again. So that's that they're directly kind of crossing wires. And of course, everybody that has this aspect doesn't mean that you're going to be a klepto, but it can, depending on life factors, circumstances, and whatnot, present itself like that. Also in that Sagittarian heavy energy of things will work out. It'll be fine. I won't get caught. Or if I do, it's just a little thing. You know, maybe taking that bigger picture view of it not being too big of a deal. And then there's also a bit of loose talk with Saturn and, is it the Mars here? Getting lost a little bit. Yeah, so there's a little bit of a loose Saturn-Mars square here with 3 degrees and 11. So anything in astrology within about 10 degrees, they're talking to each other. Right. So I wouldn't expect this to be like ruling their life, but it is something that would come up, is what I would say. There's a control aspect there, in addition to the mercurial one. So, and then we get Lindsay Lohan. She's got her Mars in Capricorn. Again, that Saturnian control of Mars, maybe feeling restricted, so it comes out in these bursts. What's going on with her Saturn? Yeah, and then we've got her ascendant, so that's again the Mars energy in Mercury, or I'm sorry, in Gemini, which is Mercury ruled. So it's this energy combination that we keep seeing over and over again of just do it and impulsivity and you know, feeling more in control. So, and then finally we get Farah Fawcett, who she's the one that actually stole the $7 lip balm.
Oh, really? Wow.
All things, right?
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So, and she's got Mars here opposing Saturn and Pluto too. But there's that control aspect, and it's also in Aquarius. So you kind of, you know, these are just 4 celebrity charts, but we see these themes come up, and it's what I would expect as an astrologer to kind of hone in on. And so where does that need come from? How can they bring more freedom to their life so that they don't feel this scarcity, you know, or that they see like maybe a bigger picture, that the lip balm will always be there, you know, if it's coming from that scarcity place. Of course, it's complex for everybody, but we've also got a Gemini. Oh no, I'm sorry, but Moon with the ascendant here. So that Mars with the Moon like right there. So the moon is kind of the lower mind, it's the emotional self. So you can see there being maybe an emotional aspect in there with taking that thing. Just because I want to do it, and maybe in a life that felt constricted, that's the thing that she can do to feel agency, right? So there we go. And with astrology, there's no good or bad. Like, it's all frequency. You've got the lower frequency and the higher frequency of things. And so knowing that if you've got this Saturn Mars energy, you can try to work with it, you know, to raise that up or to channel that impulsive energy into something more productive, you know, whether it be exercise or, you know, whatever. That's just the person, sports, whatnot. So you're kind of exhausting them, that part of you that's just like, well, I'm just going to do it because it's here. But also there's the deep psychological aspect to it that needs to be addressed. And a lot of people don't either even know that it's there, or they don't want to go there. Right? But usually in the courts, if they catch you up in this sort of thing, we'll be like, all right, let's take a look at what's going on here, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot, you know, there's been a lot of that kind of behavior in the cities, you know, in certain cities recently, right? You know, in the last 2 or 3 years, where like a whole group of people will go into and steal everything, right? Those mob stuff. I don't know if that counts or not. It kind of does, doesn't it? Or is that just for monetary gain? Right?
Yeah, especially like when you get a system that, you know, and Saturn is the system, it's the status quo.
Ah, okay.
A system that is either locking people out or isn't functioning in its ability to take care of people, then you're going to hit that survival brain in all of us at some point. Like, none of us is above going in and taking what we need in the zombie apocalypse.
Sure. What was that one thing called Les Miserables, right? Where he steals a loaf of bread. And then the whole thing's about, you know, the punishment about stealing a loaf of bread, pretty much. I mean, not the whole thing, but, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And so it speaks to a larger issue, I think, like these masks going in. It's a lack of being cared for by society at large, so the rules break down. Why should I care about your rules when you care nothing about mine? The barrier is there for all of us. You know, and it's only through the rules of society that we say, okay, we'll respect that you own this berry patch. And so if I want berries from your berry patch, I have to bring you some honey from, you know, a tree over there.
Yeah, and in olden times, it was they would do gleaning, and gleaning meant that you didn't take everything from the field. You would leave the edges of the field so that the poor could glean the wheat, you know, but they don't do that anymore. You know, it's all done by machines. So
exactly. So it's that's the wider systemic issue going on here is there's a lack of respect and a lack of being able to even see that it matters, because when, you know, you're in that deep survival mode, like I said, you're carrying minute to minute. You're not looking at the bigger picture. You're not able to. And so that's what I would say about that. It's and sometimes I've seen videos where these people are genuinely shocked when they get into trouble. And then that starts a whole other thing about the prison pipeline, right? It's like, is this set up to get you for these petty crimes that you inevitably will start doing when you're desperate, you know? And then they put you in prison, and then you're making widgets or whatever, sewing socks, whatever slave labor they're getting out of people, essentially. So that's a whole other thing, but it's a control thing, going the other way. You know, and that is going to require a complete restructuring of society to see that there's a reason we care. There's a reason that we make sure everybody's taken care of to a decent standard of living, because that berry patch is only your berry patch as long as everybody agrees that it's your berry patch. That's it. Like the thin line of civilization is like a hair. And always is, but it's just a matter of like, if you can get enough people. So if you have one person that's desperate and shoplifting to survive, they can be like taken out of the system, and it's just them.
Mm-hmm.
When you get
Mm-hmm.
whole neighborhoods, whole groups of people, it's like, you got a problem. So, but that is wouldn't make it into the DSM-5 then, because
I guess I'd make it out of the criminal justice system instead, not in the medical one.
exactly, because you're taking for gain or survival. It's not just because you feel. So if you got enough money, you can take stuff and we'll put that in a different class.
Mm.
But if you're poor, then then it's an issue. Then you're still not even going to get, probably any actual help for whatever the situation is. You just get put into even worse situations. So,
Yeah.
but it all again comes down to that loss of control or the lack of control. And the reality is that we are all agents of our own lives, right? It's just you're not made to feel that. You're made to feel like you're alone in seeing the issue or whatever. That's why I like things like this. Like we come together, we talk about these things, and it's kind of a first vital step is community and acknowledging, like even having this conversation about it. That maybe there's a wider issue going on here. It's not some moral failing. That it's a sign of desperation in a society that's been not a society really for a long time. It's been very cutthroat, and that's what you're going to get then. That's the behavior that you're going to get increasingly. So
yeah,
and that's why Marie Antoinette, she found out the hard way, right?
yeah, really. Let them eat cake.
Let them eat cake.
Or so that's the story goes. Who knows what really happened? But
Well, when I looked into it, she did say let them eat cake, and it was like it was in reference to
like they were starving or something, and
they're
they
all
had
out of
extra
bread.
cake or something.
The peasants have no bread. They're starving and revolting. Well, just let them eat cake. Like it literally didn't occur to
So
her.
how tone deaf she was, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like it's a study in tone deafness.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, we'll eat your cake. Everything.
Kind of a backhand comment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, whether it was malicious or not, or just that level of ignorance.
But you see that today in our society about different people, right? You do see that where I'll call it more of a elite mentality, like, well, they can just do that. They don't like, it's like, well, they're human too, or, I think there's us versus them kind of mentality that has really been very divisive. I'm hoping that we heal from that.
I think we will. It's going to require a restructuring of society, which usually necessitates a breaking down of the system before it can be rebuilt. And that's, I think, what we've been slowly seeing and will continue to see. And then, it's what we make of it. Like we were talking earlier about keeping your vibration high despite life's avalanches. That's important. Because then you're in the higher frequency of the Mars, Saturn, which is I am in control of my life. I am the agent that decides what happens. And part of what is interesting is the powers that be don't like people doing their gig work, finding a different way out of the system so that suddenly they're not working the same jobs that they were for the same pay. That was like, well, yeah, now we found other ways, and you can't find workers, not because people are lazy, but because they don't want to work under your conditions. They never really
Mm,
did, but it's just now
yeah.
we can talk to each other about.
Mm,
There's not just
yeah. It's
one
true.
person.
We're always changing. Things are changing. I just look at, like right now, we have this podcast that you're doing that's so great. There used to be, oh, well, you've got to be a journalist to do that,
Mhm.
and now it's really opened up and let so many more people have access to so many different ideas. And I think that's really exciting. I really love that.
Thank you. I'm just hoping to have a conversation on this stuff.
Hmm.
Started off just seeing that I was like, are they pathologizing astrology? Yeah. It's one way to kind of quantify it, I guess, which isn't a bad thing if it has us talking about ways to work with the energies, and to, help people through some of these very difficult things.
Hmm.
But I think
So,
astrology has
so I
that.
have a question for you. You do astrology work. So let's say I had something like a kleptomania type of a issue, or just I had some anxiety, that a behavior I didn't like. Would that be something that you could help me with if I wanted you to do my read, do a look at my astrology to kind of give me some insights?
Yeah. So what we would do is like these are isolated aspects that I do in these little snippets, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but you are your whole chart. So like all of the energy goes into playing into why it plays out a certain way, why it's kleptomania, not pyromania, and that's going to also depend on upbringing, temperament, what is currently in the sky, like what's happening. Like we talked
Hmm.
earlier, as of this recording, we're in the great Mars retrograde squaring Chiron
Hmm.
of 2025. And it's, Mars being that willpower, drive, action in us. It's squaring off with this kind of wounded healer archetype that is Chiron. So it's very much like we want to go and do, and we have all these emotions and thoughts, but it's like you're held back, and what's holding you back could very well be some deep inner thing. So this is actually very timely as a topic for that, when we talk about kleptomania being a way deeper issue.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
That's what this energy is asking all of us to take a look at, like really on an emotional level. Why aren't we headed forward in the way that we want?
Hmm.
That we set these goals and these intentions, and then we're spinning our wheels. It's kind of what it feels like. So this is really, it's kicking up tension and frustration in people, and that's coming from it being in like an inner thing. So anyway, to bring it back to your question of, how I would work with it, we take a look at your main aspects, anything that was going on like that. If that is talking particularly loud to you, then we would work with those energies. I'm not a psychologist. I can't diagnose anybody, but I do know these energies well. And so you
Hmm.
can start to be like, all right, here's a way that,
Hmm.
you know,
And people can reach you. How is there links below that they can click
yeah.
to reach you? Okay.
Yeah. So thank you for promoting me, Stephen. I appreciate it.
No, no problem.
I
Problem.
do chart readings over Google Meets, and it can be quite eye-opening.
I
And
bet.
when people are just feeling overwhelmed with where to start, quite honestly,
Mhm,
knowing your chart and what's going on right now can pin.
mhm, mhm,
All right, here's the biggest energy right now, and here's where the universe might be supporting you
mhm,
in the
mhm,
flow of where it's going. So you can be like, all right, this is teaching me a bigger lesson about
mhm.
control,
Right.
my agency, and who really
Mhm.
has control over it, which is what I think the Mars Chiron thing is. It's like, yeah, that
Yeah.
there's something in you that's kind of chafing at this. It's a deeper issue. If you can get it
Mhm,
out, clean out that
mhm.
wound, then you can
Yeah.
go forward on a
Yeah.
like hobbled,
Yeah.
and then you're that powerhouse once Mars goes forward in Cancer and Leo, especially then we're going to see a lot more. Like, so as the year goes on, if people do the inner work now, it's going to be much more beneficial, a couple of months from now. So that gives people hope, which is what astrology can do. I think one of the best things it does is give kind of timelines for some of this stuff. And we're always constantly learning lessons and evolving, but it can give kind of a guidepost to when something might end. Like if you're under a really hard transit, which happens to all of us all the time. Like, okay, this one's gonna last a month, hunker down, So this one we're under right now, we're feeling it very acutely today and have been the last couple of days, will be the next few, but it'll slowly start to ease off. So by this time,
Interesting.
it's not as acute. Now we will be revisiting it when Mars goes forward again in a couple of weeks, but that'll be the forward motion instead of like going, okay, we need to look back on this. Now it's like retrogrades are kind of like pulling back a bow. You set your sights, you figure it out.
Interesting.
When it goes forward, that's Mars too. But so yeah, it can be quite rewarding. So if anybody wants to get their chart read by me, I have 10 plus years experience in the trenches reading many, many charts. I worked in a psychology office for a while doing them even, which was quite an experience. And so that's kind of always been a little bit of a pull for me, hence why I'm doing these.
Well, I've seen you in action when we're working on collaborative stuff. You're very intuitive, so I can imagine it would be a really enjoyable experience. So I would encourage anybody who's listening, if they have that desire, give it a try.
Well, thank you, Stephen.
Yeah.
And I would also likewise encourage them to check out Small Town Tales because it's.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's really a fun game, and it's just great for blocking, and getting rid of blocks. Have you had a chance to use it for any of your just fun moments or anything like that?
I have not, other than the thing that we're publishing. See, I don't know if I can say Moki's Grimoire.
Moki's Grimoire, is that right? Yeah, we'll be publishing that soon. Or Grimoire. Yeah, Grimoire.
That's how I say
That's pretty fun. Yeah.
In Space and Time magazine. So
yeah,
but it is highly helpful for brainstorming on the fly, right? So not overthinking, which I think a lot of us do. So it's like now this is narrowing your focus to being all over the place. So it's a very, very good tool for anybody with ADHD like me. Like these things that I do, I don't overly prepare for them. Like I pull the charts, I think about it a little bit, I pull the little snippet, and then I just kind of go. Because if I overly prepare, I will overthink it. And then I'd sit here and go into the camera. But if it's a conversation, which is why I appreciate you and Angela and everybody who comes on here, which I should say, if you're interested, 6:30 on Wednesdays Central Time. In the Authortunities Hub, I go live with these. So if you want to be involved in the next discussion, really open to that and would love to have anybody. So if that is all, we will sign out for today. And Stephen, where can they find you?
At schwartzgames.com.
All right, I'll put a link below to that for anybody who's interested in checking out this and the many other things that you do, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Stephen's a stellar guy. So, and for me, I would just say I really appreciate everybody liking, sharing, subscribing, all of those things. It helps the channel grow. I love interacting with you. Some of you will leave comments. I've gotten private messages about how this is been starting to help people see things differently. And so that is very rewarding to me. You know, starting to build a YouTube channel, every little bit helps. So if you find this content valuable, really, really appreciate it. And I will talk to you guys later. Thank you.